Welcome to the Innovator's Spotlight, a podcast featuring conversations with some of the most innovative leaders, designers, and technologists in biomedical engineering and the health sciences. I'm Sean Grace, and today's guests are Ms. Catherine Santis and Ms. Vanessa Howell, both project engineers at DePuy Synthes at Johnson & Johnson. Kat is a University of Illinois at Chicago grad, where in 2016 she earned her master's in bioengineering, graduating with a 4.0 GPA. Kat is a member of the National Biomedical Engineering Honor Society and is currently the co-lead of the Hispanic Organization for Leadership and Achievement in Warsaw, Indiana, from where she is speaking with us today. Vanessa is a 2020 UPenn grad, where she earned her master's in mechanical engineering with a concentration in design and manufacturing. Vanessa was the first place winner of the 2019 Cornell Cup Design Competition held at NASA's Kennedy Center and was the chapter secretary of the National Society of Black Engineers from 2016 to 2018. She's speaking with us from Providence, Rhode Island. Welcome, Kat and Vanessa. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to speaking with the both of you for a number of reasons. But before we get into that, just wanted to see how the both of you are holding up during this whole COVID experience and how you might be spending or reallocating a lot of your time. Kat, what about you?
Well, it's been quite interesting. I think no one was ready for this, so it's been a huge adjustment. But I think, we're 6 months into this now, working from home, so I'm finally used to that. But, when I'm not working from home, I'm trying to stay active, whether that's doing at-home workouts or trying to go for a walk, enjoy the rest of the summer, which is almost over.
I know. It's waning fast. Vanessa, what about you?
Yeah, I think the first 3 months were a little different for me because I was still in school. So trying to figure out how to finish off the school year working at home because I moved back in with my mom. So that was definitely different, but I think that altogether was probably a good experience because I hadn't been home in a while. So being able to connect with family members again was nice, especially before starting work here at Johnson & Johnson. But I think now I actually slightly enjoy having the opportunity to, I guess, focus on myself because that's not something that I had done before. And I have a really regimented routine now where I start my days at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And just begin my days with journaling, reading, and then I go to the gym and start work after that. So just figuring out what works for me and how to, I don't know, just trying to improve my mental and physical health as much as possible during this time.
Wow, 4:30 a.m. That's a bit early for me.
Oh, yeah.
So that's very encouraging to hear you that you're so disciplined in that way. So I was reading the other day some reports on the ASME website, and that's the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And one of the statistics that came out of some recent research was that 20% of engineers are currently women, compared to just 5.8% in 1980. So in that respect, women have come a long way in the area of engineering and STEM careers. However, over 32% of female STEM majors in college switch out of STEM for other concentrations, and only 30% of women who earn bachelor's degrees in engineering are still working in engineering 20 years later. What are your thoughts on some of those stats? Kat?
Well, to be honest, I think I didn't even know it was that high. And I think a lot of that is just, when you start, well, at least when I started in 2016 at J&J, that was one of the first things that I noticed is, I was one of the only few females in my team, let alone in that department. So it's great to hear that it's, as high as 30%, I think you said, or 20%?
20%.
20%.
Yeah, 20%.
But I definitely think there's still room for improvement, even when we walk through the hallways today.
Yeah.
It's encouraging for sure. I think it motivates me to continue in this path. But yeah, I mean, I guess personally, when I graduated, I still felt like I was a minority in that way. Not a
Right.
lot of females.
Right. Vanessa, what's your take on the fact that it seems about a third of female STEM majors in college switch out of STEM for other concentrations? Now, I don't know how that compares to men, but it seemed a little high, but I don't know that for sure. And then 30% of women apparently who do earn a bachelor's degree in engineering are still working. So in other words, 70% of them are not in engineering 20 years later. Now, I don't know how that compares to other fields. I know a lot of people graduate with a specific degree and end up having a career in another area. So I don't know, all the objective comparisons, but just based on that, what are your thoughts, maybe based on your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it necessarily surprises me. I think like retention of females in this industry is something that needs to be improved on. Especially in college, like just speaking from my own experience, it's like it was very daunting for me because I actually switched into the engineering school. So it
From
was,
where?
I was in the School of Arts and Sciences, so I didn't know what I wanted to study when I went into college. But eventually, like I just figured out that I wanted to do mechanical engineering, and I think like an aspect of that of why I just didn't know anything about engineering. I had never met an engineer until I went into college. So it was just not something that I was exposed to. And again, like if I did, it was not something seen that a lot of women were doing. Um, so I think going to college and like figuring out like, oh, engineering seems really cool, but then doing it and not having like a community of people that I felt comfortable around was something probably a reason that I feel like retention is really bad for women right now. Um, and then going into industry, and again, like at least at school, I think it was somewhere near like 40% were women, whereas at J&J and like in industry jobs, I know it's a lot lower. Um, so it's something that needs to be improved on, but it's not something that's prevented me from working in this industry.
I did see another stat that said that approximately 20% of women engineers are women of color. So 1 out of 5 of the women who are engineers are women of color. Now that's slightly below, I guess 30% would be population wide. So it's less than the population at large. But being women of color within engineering, did you find any additional obstacles along the way? Vanessa?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuances to that.
Yeah.
And I can only speak to my own experience, but especially going into college, I feel that didn't have a lot of the opportunities that a lot of my like fellow women in my classes had, whether that was the level at which my high school was at. Like I thought that there was a dramatic increase in difficulty going from high school to college, where I remember my roommate in college, she told me that she actually thought that going to school was easier because her like private high school was so difficult. So just like that gap
Huh.
made that really hard for me. And I did know like I did notice there was a small amount of females, and within that, like finding women of color within those females is also extremely hard. Which is why I joined organizations such as Nesbianship so I could build that community. Because it's really important to me to have a community and have mentors of people to push me through in a field that's mostly white males. I don't know if I fully answered your question.
No, you
Uh,
absolutely did. Thank you for that, Vanessa. Kat, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll speak from the perspective of joining a huge company like J&J as a Latina woman, as a Latina. I think that was very tough for me initially. I went through a huge, it was culture shock, number one, when I moved from Chicago to Westchester. And a lot of it, to be honest, I dealt with a lot of just, I think identity, like almost an identity crisis when I first started. I didn't see any representation. I think I was the only Hispanic female in my department and actually in the entire floor. So that was a huge shock to me starting out. And then I think something that a lot of people don't talk about is, and maybe because there's just some, it's hard to talk about these things and be vulnerable, but I definitely went through a lot of imposter syndrome when I initially started out my career. Just those feelings of, this must be a mistake. I don't know how I got this job. And a lot of that you don't realize it has to do with the fact that you don't see people who look like you in positions of power and influence within your own
Yeah.
organization. So
Right.
there was a lot of just getting used to, okay, I went from an extremely diverse university and city to a very, very to be honest, I don't know how else to put it, but very white environment. And so for me,
Mhm.
that was a challenge. It was a lot to get through, and it definitely, I think my first year in the RDLDP program was extremely challenging because of that.
Yeah.
I've grown a lot since, of course, and it's helped me, and I think it motivates me to create a more inclusive environment for everyone else coming into the program and into our company. But yeah, it definitely affected me a lot. I think I had to deal with a lot of other things that I don't think, for example, a white female would have to deal with in terms of the whole identity and maybe mental health aspect of it.
Right, right. Makes sense. Vanessa, did you feel at all sort of any of that imposter syndrome that Kat refers to?
I think I've felt that like my entire life, and I don't know necessarily the solution to fix that, because I think everyone has imposter syndrome, like despite like your race or upbringing.
Right.
But yeah,
Mm.
that feeling of not belonging, I think that was a good point that you brought up, of like not seeing people who look like you in this field. That's not something I necessarily thought about. I just always felt like, why did you choose me out of all the applicants that apply here?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I guess I felt that in college just because I felt like some things come easier to people. But I think working here, I felt um, I don't feel behind or like that I'm not capable. I would just like to see more people who look like me.
Hmm. So, what types of support do you think, and maybe even reel this back to primary, secondary education as it relates to young girls who are either being exposed or not being exposed to STEM and being encouraged to pursue those types of careers? What types of support are there from schools, universities? You mentioned some associations and even corporations such as J&J. What types of support do you think are most impactful to these young women? Kat?
I think having a mentor, even at a young age, to start to help you to just gain some exposure in careers in STEM. So I know at my university, our the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers chapter there, we a lot of our efforts were focused on exposing Hispanic students to careers in STEM. So we would have an event called Noches de Ciencia, which is Nights of Science, that we would host at our university to expose kids. I believe it was, I mean, middle school to high school students to science, technology, to STEM, basically. So we would have different activities, and we would also help their parents, with whether it's FAFSA applications or just college applications, that whole process. So that was one way I think our organization, at least on the university level, provided some support to our community, our Latino community.
So at the university, they reached back into the K through 12
Correct.
programs.
Yeah, we had partnerships with some of our high schools, with I think two high schools in the city, and one or two middle schools, I think.
Hmm.
Yep.
Gotcha. Vanessa, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think consistency, like you could have programs like maybe in high school and events and stuff, but the consistency of a mentor or seeing people who work in the field is extremely important. Um, Especially
Hmm.
at a young age, because I'm pretty sure I think it's around 15 or 16 is when women typically like aren't interested in STEM anymore, and I don't know if that stat is correct, but I think making sure that people see what you can do in the field, because growing up, like I thought if you like STEM and you wanted to help people, the only thing you could do was be a doctor. That was all. And maybe that's because my parents are in the medical field and that's all that I associated with STEM and helping people. But there's so much you can do within engineering, and so much that I didn't know until like very, very late. Like I think figuring this out in college is almost too late. And I think being able to see what you can do with whether that's engineering or going further and getting a PhD or becoming a doctor as well. Like I think just knowing what you can do in each field and knowing that it's attainable is important, and doing that at a younger age.
Sure. So when did you first consider engineering as a possible career path?
For me, it's like the end of my freshman year of college. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I had never met an engineer until I came to college. So I think all of high school and middle school, I just thought like engineers built bridges and that was it, and made
Mm-hmm.
cars. um, so I just didn't know anything until I met a few engineers at school, and I met one in particular, and he was a PhD student, and he just told me about what he was doing, and he listened to me talk about like the world around me, and like I don't know, like how I wanted to change people and like what I wanted to do. And he didn't even want to like pressure me in engineering. He was just trying to help me figure out like where I should go, because I was really lost at the end of my freshman year. I didn't know what I should study, and it was kind of getting last minute until when I needed to decide a major. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think having that conversation and the willingness to try classes in the engineering school is what really led me to it.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you were looking to change people, what do you mean by that?
I always wanted to do work that would impact the world or make the world a better place, specifically helping people or giving back to my community. And I just
Gotcha.
didn't know what that looked like. And for a long time, I thought that was being a doctor, but I actually don't. Like I never liked biochemistry, and I didn't particularly like spending long times in hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was just really at a conflict, but I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to help the world. I just didn't know what it would look like. And then after having that conversation with my friend in engineering, I realized that there's so much you can do in the engineering world to do that.
Mm-hmm. Kat, what about you? When did you first consider engineering as a possible career?
So I kind of have a similar story to Vanessa. I think when I started college, I definitely didn't go in with a path in mind. I knew I wanted to do something related to in the medical field. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a dentist, so I started following, the basic biology curriculum. But I found that I was losing interest and wasn't really passionate about the things I was learning necessarily. So I started, reaching out to different people, and I had a friend who was an engineer. She was actually a bioengineer, and she was a part of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and she told me I could join even if I wasn't an engineer. And so I decided to join the organization, and that's where I met a lot more engineers and got to, in talking to them, just hearing about their experiences and what you could do within engineering. And I think that's what sparked my interest in that field. And I think bioengineering specifically allowed for that blend between medicine and technology, which is something that I really was interested in. I knew I wanted to make an impact within the medical field, but I didn't know how exactly I wanted to do that. Like I didn't want to be a physician or a surgeon, but I did want to make a difference within within healthcare. And I think
Mm.
bioengineering is the perfect marriage of those two subjects, like medicine and tech. So that's how it started for me.
Now, speaking of mentors, role models, and influencers, Kat, I guess I'm going to assume that your mom maybe had some positive influence on you.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, to tell me a little about how she influenced you as you were growing up.
So my mom, gosh, so she's just my superhero. She's a single mother, raised two children, came to the United States when she probably, I think, 30 years ago. And she's just always been very hardworking. And she very much instilled in us the importance of getting an education. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to, I think she just barely finished. I think all she did was K through 8, and after that wasn't able to go to high school or anything due to her just different circumstances that didn't allow her to complete an education. So for her, it was very important to instill in us the importance of getting a college education and how that would, positively impact our life. And to be honest, just her hardworking, she just worked so hard for us, and she went through so much that, aside from doing this career, because it's something that I'm passionate about, it's a lot of it I owe to her, just her hard work and always pushing me when things got rough in school. I mean, she just reminded me of, just kept motivating me to keep going. She was such a great role model. And within my family too, we have people that are, actually we have a couple of engineers within the family. So it was good to know that there were other people in my life that completed this. Engineering isn't easy. So I'm like, okay, if these people can do it, and my brother actually is engineer as well. And so he's a huge role model for me.
Gotcha.
That's kind of what kept me going.
Very nice. So you had some people in the family that were engineers and doing something that you could see yourself doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Vanessa, what about you? How did your folks influence you, good or bad, in growing up?
Yeah, I think it was so interesting to hear your story about your mom, because I see a lot of parallels between like how I view my mother and how she's been a role model for me. She actually moved to Philly from Puerto Rico at a young age, I think somewhere around 12 or 13, but she was one of 9 siblings, and she was the only one to I guess she obtained an associate's degree and pursue nursing. And I think seeing like all and hearing about the struggles that she had gone through, and she, like, my mom and my dad have both always like enforced like getting an education and pursuing something that you're passionate about. And I think seeing what they went through and thinking about the struggles that I went through, it makes it seem really small. They're still valid, but I think being able to see like how far someone can go with how little that they have is extremely influential. And my mom's always been my rock. She's like my best friend. And she's always supported me through it, literally thick and thin. So yeah, I love my
So
mom.
important. So important. So I want to just switch gears a little bit and talk about how each of you happened upon J&J's RDLDP program, and how you may have prepared and positioned yourself for that experience. Kat, how did you come across RDLDP?
So I actually learned about this opportunity through an event that was hosted at on campus. So J&J, I think it was the first time J&J came to our university. So it was a big deal for us. And we learned that they were recruiting for several positions at DePuy Synthes, one of which was the RDLDP program. So at the time I was getting ready to, I think I was close to finishing my master's degree, and I had focused, my concentration wasn't within biomechanics. So I definitely knew about DePuy, and I knew, Zimmer, all the other companies that were orthopedic related. So I decided to check this opportunity out and go to it was a sort of a networking session, or informational session actually. And so I met a recruiter there, and they talked about the product lines, and I was extremely interested in what the program had to offer. And so I connected with the HR rep there, and I was lucky to get a phone call if I was available for an interview. So, I definitely think I was at the right place at the right place at the right time. I was very fortunate to get this opportunity, but I think it for sure helped to have the biomechanics concentration, because it's obviously related to orthopedics. So.
Right. So was orthopedics and medical devices already on your radar?
Yes, it was. So I did several. So I had a research internship in a biomechanics lab, and I also interned my last year at a medical accelerator for devices lab. So it's called Mad Lab, kind of a weird acronym, but we partnered a lot with hospitals, with the university hospital. And so that really helped to solidify my interest in working for a medical device company, because we did a lot of, we did a lot of things that we actually do now within J&J. So collecting voice of customer, listening to the surgeon's needs and what they can improve, what we can improve as engineers within the OR to make their experience easier. So I think I already had that in mind, that I wanted to do something within medical devices. And then my interest in orthopedics was there due to the research in biomechanics. So.
Gotcha. Vanessa, what about you?
Yeah, I think I have a similar story. I happened upon the program at a career fair. So I had actually arrived at the tail end. I think there was about 10 minutes left of the career fair, and I knew I could only choose one booth to go to. And I don't know, I think I was just drawn to Johnson & Johnson. I knew that I just thought that maybe like you had to have experience in medical devices and maybe majored in bioengineering for them to consider you. But after having a conversation with a recruiter there, they seemed to really like mechanical engineers working for them. So it did spark my interest. And again, I think I just had that imposter syndrome. Like I knew I was going to apply, but I never thought anything was going to come of it. And then when I did finally get that interview, like I looked further into working into medical devices, and I thought that like I was just extremely excited and I didn't want to let this opportunity go. And yeah, I think that's mainly how I happened upon J&J.
So let me ask you this. What advice do both of you have for young women and or young women of color pursuing a potential career in engineering or in STEM in general? Kat?
I would say, I think just don't give up no matter what, and no matter what difficulties you face, and understand that this is a process, and be patient with yourself. And to just realize that even if you don't see a lot of representation within the field, you can be a part of that change. You can be you can be a part of that change. You can be what starts that off. And so maybe when you join a company, you won't see a lot of females of color, but keep on, just stay focused, and don't lose faith in yourself and in the process, and trust it. It takes time, and be patient.
Vanessa?
Yeah, I think my advice would be somewhat similar. I think just knowing that you're going to encounter challenges along the way, but being willing to know that there's an end goal, and know that once you overcome these challenges, like you can be successful. And also like once you are an engineer, and once you do pursue STEM, like know your value and know your worth, because you might not feel that all the time. And that's also something I struggle with, but your opinions and everything that you bring to the table is extremely important. The diversity in thought and creativity that you have is extremely valuable. So just knowing your worth, knowing your value, and knowing that like working in STEM and being in STEM is extremely possible, and you should just know that it will come with adversity, but you can make it through.
Excellent advice on both of your parts. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to talk today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Innovator Spotlight podcast is brought to you by Johnson & Johnson's R&D Leadership Development Program, cultivating tomorrow's innovation leaders in medical engineering and health science technologies. I'm Sean Grace. Thanks so much for listening.